Hello, YouTube. Luigi here. I'm going to pick up on something I haven't done in a long time. This is going to be another installment of my series called Tales of a Country Architect. This is going to be episode 16. It's been a long time since I made 15. And this was going to start out being a real simple short story about the very first foundation I drew for the very first high-end house I drew for my mentor, Frank Kennett. I'm an intern here. So Frank Kennett had this great house called the McGahey House, which in 1978 cost, 79 by the time it was done, cost $400,000. And then that was a lot of money in 1979. And it was designed by one of his interns named Margo P. Jones, who was very talented. And she went off and got licensed and started her own practice. We'll talk more about that later. And after she had gone, all she left were a bunch of beautiful design sketches on yellow butter paper. And Frank had no one to draw it, so Frank borrowed Mark Lucy, who turned into a brilliant engineer in his own right, from Ed Bergeron's office. And Mark was on loan. He started to hardline these drawings, but it was my job when I first got there to turn this into a set of working drawings. Now remember, I have no experience doing this whatsoever, but we pulled it off and they built the house, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It was a complicated house. It had two wings at an angle of different widths and a lot of ups and downs. The foundation was complicated. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of steps, a lot of shelves. It had a two-way structural concrete slab in the mudroom holding a real mud-set brick floor, Frank's Cainganic brick. And Frank designed this reinforcing, this two-way reinforcing himself. I saw him do it. I was so impressed. I was just so impressed. Anyway, I'm drawing the foundation plan. Gordon Cormac, who's still around, Cormac Construction, built it. And Gordon had a concrete sub guy named Carl Liesenfeld. And I think the name of his firm was Sureform Concrete or something. And these stories go back so far that there's no indiscretion here in telling them. The reason I told you the owner's name is because both he and his wife have passed on. In rather curious circumstances. I remember talking to his wife, who looked like Shirley Jones. She was a cute little doll. They were both from Florida and had heavy accents. And Shirley was saying how there should be a law that a husband and wife have to die together so one doesn't have to carry on without the other. And I thought that was very sentimental, because she was considerably younger than Dr. McGahey. It wasn't his first time at the marriage altar. And sure enough, they did die together in a helicopter crash, because Dr. McGahey drew a helicopter. So this started out to be a story about a foundation, but it's going to go through many different driveways just like that and become very anecdotal, I promise you. So I'm drawing the foundation, and Frank Kennett comes up to me and he says, "Now listen, Luigi, I want you to call out the tops of all these concrete shelves and steps and footings and ups and downs in decimal feet." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because they're going to set these heights with a surveyor's instrument, and it's always in decimal feet." I said, "Okay, I can do that." Now, in those days, there was no feet-inch fraction calculator, no conversion to decimals electronically. I did it all by hand, and I double, triple, quadruple checked myself, because this is concrete now, and you can't bust it out easily once it's done. So I felt very confident that all the heights were right. You might be able to know where this is going already. The job's under construction. The excavation has begun. The footings were poured by another guy that they threw off the job because my report on his work was scathing. I drew those footings dead straight, and they ran like snakes, and it bugged the hell out of me that we're off to this kind of start already. The truth is, footings are covered up and buried, and nobody sees them, and I was just being a prick. Sorry. This might have a few smatterings of adult language that way. So Carl Liesenfeld is laying up his formwork on these sloppy footings, and he comes storming into the office one day, and he was mad. And he said, "Who the hell set all these heights in decimal feet?" And I very sheepishly said, "I did that." He said, "Well, why the hell did you do that?" I said, "Well, Frank told me that you were going to set all these heights with a surveyor's instrument." And he pulls out this big, thick, yellow 30-foot Stanley tape measure. And I fear he's about to shove it up my ass. And he says, "This is the only goddamn instrument I have." Well, I never made that mistake again. And the truth is, Carl and I, over the decades, because this is back in '78, Carl and I have developed a very warm relationship, and I'm glad that has happened. Let's talk about Margo. Margo left the firm, did her internship, took her exam, got her license, started her own practice in Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, Margo was not the first person to do this. And if you put yourself out there as a mentoring architect who takes on interns, you should expect this. But Frank was always personally devastated that they didn't stick around to become partners and build his firm, and with all this new talent, and it just always bothered him. And I understood it because I did the same thing, and I hurt him as well that way. He was paying me a lousy $9 an hour. And if you want that kind of loyalty from your employees, well, pay for it. Let them know they're worth something to you. Let them know that give him more than $9 an hour. But the truth is, he started me at $4.50, so making $9, I thought I was in high heaven, Well, it came time for me to sit for my exam. I got an outline here. Just wanted to make sure I haven't skipped anything out of order. When it came time for me to sit for my exam, I had to go back to what they call my base state of Illinois. I was born in Chicago, because that was, at the time, that was the only state in the Union. Now there are none. That was the only state where you did not have to have a professional degree in architecture to take the exam. They accepted a high school diploma with a much longer internship. Now remember, I dropped out of school to be a sculptor, so I never got the degree. Okay, so I go back to Chicago, and I'm staying with my dad in Evergreen Park. And I hadn't seen him in a while, and I had some drawings with me, blueprints that I ran at Frank's office of samples of my work. And Dad's an architect too, so this is where this is going. So I unrolled this roll of drawings, and Dad is just hypnotized by them. He said, "You could draw like this?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "I had no idea you could draw like this." I said, "Well, there's a lot about me you don't know, Dad. It's no surprise here." He says, "You mean you drew like this for that guy, and that stupid son of a bitch didn't offer you a partnership?" Well, I would never have thought of Frank that way. I loved the man to death. I loved him like a father. In fact, I probably loved him more than I loved my father. But that was an interesting thing for Dad to say, because Dad likes paying for talent and keeping it. Frank expected the talent to stay, but he was never willing to pay for it. So I take a refresher course offered at the University of Illinois Chicago Circle campus for this exam, the ARE, the Architect's Registration Exam. It's a brutal exam. It's over 36 hours of exams. It's given over 4 days. The last part of the exam, the design exam, is 12 hours long. You have to show up with your own drawing board, your own parallel rule, your own triangles, an adjustable triangle, your own scales, erasers, erasing shields, your own lamp, your own brush. You have to show up with everything, because you are putting together an abbreviated set of working drawings. And they're going to give you we knew the building type, but we didn't have the program. So in this course, in this refresher course that I'm taking, I swear this professor helped write this exam. I swear he must have. He said something about 3 or 4 times that never ever got locked out of my head. He said select your column grid first and then work out your floor plan. This was a big building. Select your column grid first and then lay it. So I never forgot that. So I go to take the exam. It's down in Joliet, Illinois, so it's a fair drive away. You got to get there early and set up all your stuff and be ready. And I look at the program, and lo and behold, every space or every grouping of spaces that wanted to communicate with each other was some multiple of 2,500 square feet, 1,250 square feet, 625 square feet. So I said, oh my God, this is the key. This is it. So I set up a 50 by 50 column grid. And the floor plan just fell together. And it fell together very, very quickly for me. And I'm a fast hand draftsman in those days anyway. So I get my entire exam done, take the papers up, four full hours before the exam is over. And the guy next to me, he's still sketching things out on yellow butter paper. He hasn't even started his drawings. So confidence was high. I was feeling really, really good about this. And this is the end of a long week of grueling exams. And I feel like I had run a marathon, but I also felt that I had nailed it. And I nailed it really good. So I get to, oh God, I get to Dad's house. And, Dad I used to call him Mr. Negative Reinforcement, because he would never give you a compliment on anything. It would just destroy him to do that, because in Dad's universe there's only room for one ego, and it was his. And look at me, look how old I am, and I'm still dealing with dad baggage. That's how overbearingly powerful a man he was in my life. And so I tell him what I did. I'm all excited, and the first words out of his mouth were, he says, really? I would have fucking flunked you for that alone. And it's like, talk about being deflated. The guy can't see that you're on a high. He can't give you any little pat on the back here. So it's like, ugh. So that was in June. They were grading the exams that summer. You were going to get your results in October. So I'm still hanging around in Chicago. I had a piece of land in New Hampshire. I always knew I was going back to New Hampshire. So the envelope with the test results, and it goes to Dad's office. He calls me up and he says, you got something here from Springfield, Illinois. I said, okay. He says, do you want me to open it? I said, no, I'll just get to it next time I'm in. He goes, you sure? I said, yeah, I can contain my excitement. Don't worry about it. So I I come in to his office probably the next Monday morning, and it was killing him the way I got a scissors and cut the end of the envelope off and very methodically pulled it out. And there it was. I had passed. I had passed all 9 divisions. And I passed them with very high marks. I got a 98 in materials detailing. My lowest score was an 83, and that was in lateral loads. It was earthquake design. And in the design exam, it's either a P or an F, a pass or a fail. So I had nailed this thing. Not only did I passed it really, really, really well, because I'm one of those brainy assholes who tests well. I always have been. So, and only 10% of the candidates who take that test pass it the first year. They say the average is 3 years, and it took my father 3 years to pass his. So he wasn't happy that I passed it in one. He just wasn't. If he was, he certainly didn't express it. And there it was. Everything I did, Dad seemed to see as a competitive threat, and I wasn't even in the same state as he was practicing architecture. I never ran any of my work past him. He never saw any of it, because I knew he would be singularly disinterested in it. He didn't care. So there I was. I passed, did it in 1 year, and Dad's right next to me, and Dad is crestfallen. I can just see it. And there was no pat on the back, no nod, no attaboy, no good job, no I'm proud of you, son. And that might sound like small potatoes and even whining, but my brother John, who was a victim of the same father, said this about Dad. He said, he said it about us. We were 4 brothers. In relationship to Dad, he said, all that any son wants from a father is that nod, that pat on the back, that look of approval, that attaboy, that good job. And Dad was not one to pass those out. In fact, just as soon call you a fucking jagoff or an idiot, than tell you that you were doing a good job. That's why I always called him Mr. Negative Reinforcement. Okay, so I got my license. I go back to New Hampshire, and Frank's there, and Frank's offered me a partnership finally. And by this time, I wanted my own practice. This is the whole point of it, and I didn't know how to say no to Frank. I didn't know how, I was afraid of hurting his feelings. I didn't know how to say no, but I knew I was not interested in this partnership. So I just ignored the question until it was obvious that he saw me setting up my own office. But I did say to Frank once, I said, Frank, part of doing an internship with a mentor is you learn a lot about what to do. I said, but you also learn a lot about what not to do. And I don't know if I said it wrong, but I could see that had hurt his feelings. Because he's just a human being. He ran an honest practice. He was a man of great integrity and moral rectitude, but he was foibled like the rest of us. And there was a lot to learn from Frank, both good, what to do and what not to do. So, what else is on my list here? That's it. That's really all I got to share. It was kind of rambled on a bit, but it started out with the concrete foundation and the tape measure story, and one thing just led to another. So, Tales of a Country Architect, episode 16. God bless you. I love you all. Take good care, everybody. Bye-bye.